Live.
Yeah.
We're going
Okay,
live.
we're live.
Okay.
Just
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Attention Patriots, Red Nation Rising Radio is about to begin.
Please return your Republic to its original position and prepare for takeoff.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Welcome, everyone, to Red Nation Rising Radio, the radio program that is all about you, your questions, your tweets, your chat room. Angela's there in the chat room to help us catch your questions. I'm Lou. Say hello, Jared.
good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So we're your guides to the reddest hour on radio, so let's go. It's June already. Can you believe that, Jared?
It's going fast.
Yeah, year's moving fast, so it's pretty hard to believe, and we are happy to start June here on K98 Talk. We hope our regular listeners are all there, and we have some new listeners joining us. Tonight we have Dr. Randy Arrington. Any of your questions in the chat room for him? He's a UCLA political science professor and a proud Bruin, I found out, talking about his blog on Lenin's grand plan for America and the world. So how is that grand plan being carried out? And still to this day, and well, we've come a long way. We're going to find out about that. And just a little reminder, coming up after us is Game On with JD and Stacy. They're at 9 o'clock. So stick around for some comic relief from those guys because they're pretty hilarious. So in the meantime, let's get to what you've been talking about this week. Featured blog. We have this week in politics and pop cultures. Pretty good blog by Politically Incorrect, so check that out. We have some featured tweets tonight too. R&R Florida, Red Nation Rising Florida. They were kind enough to point out to us something that happened in Orlando that they did not want us to miss, which was the coordinator for CARE, which, as you know, is the Center for Arab Islamic. What is that acronym, Jerry? Do you remember the
Center for American Islamic Relations?
That's right. Yeah, was one of the was actually arrested, or one of the people arrested out of 101 in a child sex ring in Lake and Polk counties, which Lake County, I mean that's near Lakeland, near Orlando, Florida. Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, they work in Disneyland and SeaWorld. That's kind of scary if you're a parent. You got to start watching your kids like a hawk, you know.
Right, absolutely. I'm not a parent, but I cannot imagine how shocking that must have been for parents. And, you know, just to talk about this former CARE official, he was the coordinator for CARE in Orlando. He was the founder of the Salim Academy. Talk about access to children, and a Muslim youth coordinator. So this is really scary stuff. Not only that that he was in such a high position with care, but that he had such access to children. It's just really scary. I always say that if there's one thing that an opportunist will always do, and it's look for an opportunity, and boy, he found one. And our wonderful Twitter manager, Denise, found a pattern with a dentist, a Muslim dentist, molesting young female patients. Again, access to children. I don't even want to think about how that happened, but this is pretty scary stuff, and it's for respected members of their community. I would think that they would be pretty concerned about this. It's definitely, when you talk about reputation, which is something that I do, is manage reputations. It's definitely not a good PR event for CARE. I'm pretty sure they're pretty worried about that. So thanks for pointing that out to us, Red Nation Rising Florida, and keeping us up to date on what's going on there. New Mexico gave us a couple of tweets this week. Big thanks for making sure we're up to date on what PolitiFact is doing with our conservative candidates. The trouble that they'll go to, the length that they'll go to in proving that someone is correct is pretty amazing. But Rick Perry says that 1 in 5 U.S. children live in a family on assistance. Wow.
Yeah. 1 out of 6 Americans basically is on food stamps, fairly close to that number. So it's not that surprising that 1 out of 5 children. It's just, either way, it's a sign of what's happening. There's no recovery. There's more people flooding over the border. And
absolutely. I mean, there is no recovery for sure when you have that number of people getting assistance and not able to make it. I know we talk about entitlements and we talk about getting assistance, but it's not the fact that they are getting assistance. It's the fact that they're not able to make it in this country on their own.
Right.
Right?
Here in Arizona, we passed a law that now we have the shortest span that somebody can be on welfare will be a year. That starts in July. We have a $1 billion budget deficit, and they just passed a law to limit it to 1 year. So 1,600 families will drop off the welfare rolls in July. So that's a step in the right direction. I mean, that's real sad for those families, but
it is. What are they going to do, right? So, I mean, is the economy so much better that they're going to be able to go out and find jobs? And, I hope and pray that they will, but, I really kind of doubt it. And that's pretty sad, like you said. And I doubt very seriously. Well, I don't doubt very seriously because I know how smart our listeners in our community are. They probably knew exactly what they were doing. But if we really want to know why, part of this is happening, and we might be able to relate this to what's going on as well, with what Dr. Arrington has to say. They also pointed out that George Will, and PolitiFact checked this and said it was true as well. George Will says that we spent more money on lobbying, or we spend more money, and this is a 5-year outlook, on lobbying than on campaigns. All the money that goes into political campaigns. But we spend more money in this country on lobbying, and on top of that, they believe it's probably underreported.
yeah, I'm not.
So the underreported numbers are so much higher than the campaign dollars. I don't think campaign finance reform is where we need to start.
No, and they're never gonna fix that. Never. It's a game. It's a huge game for grown-ups to play with lots of money and power. We'll never get lobbyists under control. I mean, we don't even know some of the, when you trace it back, sometimes it's hard to find sources. If journalists do research, they can't even get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The sources are hidden, and I've got some good stories about that we won't go into. I might bring it up when we're on with Dr. Arrington, which is what we're about to do. We're going to get a break, and we will be back in 2 minutes with Dr. Randy Arrington.
And
Oh, Okay, well, let me set this up just a little bit. So we'll be talking about societal transformation and harmony and bliss, which is what Marx told us that we would get with a socialist society. Ultimately, he predicted a dictatorship of the proletariat. We'll be talking about that with Dr. Rainey Arrington when we come back.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
The feeling most people get when they hear Barack Obama speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I don't have that too often.
Steady.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. Ricky Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, will tackle the important issues facing America today as he tries to keep America from coming off the track. Get ready to hear the truth every Monday through Friday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, here on K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network.
Welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy.
Abolish the IRS. Take all 125,000 IRS agents and put them on our southern border.
That's us. That's right. Gotta love this American ride. Both ends of the ozone burning. Funny how the world keeps turning.
You know, I always hate to come out of break right there because I want you to keep playing that song, Jared. But we are back with Dr. Rainey Arrington. Hi, Dr. A.
Meredith girl, I'm here. So good to be with you and your listening audience tonight.
Thanks. We are so happy to have you, and I guess that's my new name where you're concerned, right? So, societal transformation, harmony, and bliss. I think that's my 4 favorite words in your blog that you gave us this week. You know, today you say the communist revolution has not occurred the way that Marx hypothesized that it would, it would just happen, you know. So of course, because people are just going to willingly give you all their stuff and let you give it back to them as you see fit. So you say that Marx's perspective was that the sycophants need to be patient, you know, for capitalists to wear itself out, capitalism to wear itself out. And the Bolsheviks, especially Lenin, really knew that this would never happen, right? And that they would have to force it. And Lenin was famous for really being that person to force the issue, that they would have to force communism on the people, correct?
Well, Marx believed that the alienation and the oppression of the workers, he called them the proletariat, worldwide, at the hands of those dastardly capitalists, would eventually cause them to have a class consciousness and realize that they were being totally taken advantage of, and would compel them worldwide, a worldwide phenomenon, an event, simultaneously a synchronized event, to rise up and defeat these bourgeois, he called them, and then they would then transition eventually, after a couple of generations of human engineering, to a full-fledged communist society, which for Marx would be utopia on earth. He had a lot of confidence in the proletariat. Lenin did not have a lot of confidence in the proletariat, and his probably most important contribution to Marxist theory, which he outlined in What Is to Be Done in another piece called State and Revolution, was that we had to force this revolution. And the way we would force the revolution to the world was to have a professional revolutionary whose job, and it didn't matter whether it was a middle class or a proletariat, but the professional revolutionary was going to be trained just like any other police force, and they would be extremely secretive. When you compare the two men, Marx was a scholar, Marx was a thinker. Lenin was the 1920s version of Barack Obama. Lenin was a community organizer, and he believed in the primacy of politics and community organization over economics, where Marx was reversed. So he's basically your community organizer back in early 1900s. Just the same thing that is happening right now in the United States with Mr. Obama in the White House, who is a consummate community organizer and politician. And that's exactly what he thought. We had to force it.
And that is fascinating because of something else that you have in your blog. So you're saying Lenin was in his time, the equivalent of what Obama is in our time. You've also said that Marx had called for a dictatorship of the proletariat, the working class. Lenin called for a dictatorship over the proletariat. So the community organizers organized the community so that they could basically be despots over the community. Am I getting this right?
You're getting it right, and it goes back to his having no faith in the proletariat, not the proletariat and the peasantry. See, Marx believed that the actual worldwide revolution would start first in the highly advanced economic nations in Europe, the industrialized nations, and then it would spread out in that synchronized worldwide event from there. And, of course, Lenin said no. Another one of his arguments was you could sustain socialism in one country, and his country, of course, was in the backward agrarian nation, the peasant nation of Russia, and you could start it there and sustain it there, nurture it there, and then from that vantage point, that's where the tentacles of communism, socialism would spread out, unfurl all over the world, and then bring the world in from that one base station, if you will, in Russia, and create a utopia on Earth from that position. And that's what he thought. That's why you had to have the vanguard, is what he called it. The professional revolutionaries was the vanguard leading all of this because he didn't have faith in the peasantry and the proletariat workers. He didn't think they were smart enough or conscious enough to do this, and that's why you had to have these professional revolutionaries who were more intellectual to take care of this. And that's exactly what Barack Obama is doing, the consummate community organizer. He's basically engaging in cultural Marxism with all these disgruntled, marginalized groups and whipping them up into a froth of revolution, which eventually is going to have him at the top and all of his sycophants to the top, with him leading all of this and benefiting from it when it comes to fruition. They would be basically instituting communism, socialism for everybody else, but they would be at the top. They would be engaging in democracy and live the fruits of that life. Nobody else would. Everybody else would be egalitarian, and it would be a wretched equality down below where Barack Obama would be up at the top.
Right, which is, I'm hearing a lot of really familiar things. The analogies that you've just drawn between the two of them are really amazing and ring very, very true to me.
Well, it's happening right now, and you talk about cultural Marxism. This is something that Lenin actually invented it in about 1919 because he realized one of his tactics for community organizing was he was going to infiltrate the other political parties of the world, the other churches of the world, the other communities, schools, media, government, everything, entertainment. He was going to infiltrate everywhere with his network of subversive spies loyal to him, and then later on Joseph Stalin. And this is where cultural Marxism began. It was sort of refined at the Frankfurt School in 1923, and then when they got kicked out after World War II started, they then moved to New York and started affiliating with Columbia University. Well, guess who went to Columbia University? Supposedly, Barack Obama. And that's where now it has been perfected. So now you have, instead of this disgruntled, alienated, oppressed workers class as the basis from which communism springs, you have disgruntled homosexuals, feminists, black militants, all of these different little marginalized groups that they're enraging them and getting them to, through cultural Marxism and cultural pessimism, getting them to hate their own country, getting them to hate their own upbringing, and actually eventually want, desire, and beg for a communist revolution to bring them out of their misery. That's exactly what's happening right now.
And this is what's fascinating to me. So many people attribute this strategy to Saul Alinsky, but Lenin came first.
Lenin came first.
Yes, Alinsky took Lenin's ideas and softened them and Americanized them. Am I getting that right?
That's correct. He did soften them is a good idea, a good way to put it, because it's about marketing. And there was a fellow by the name of Norman Thomas. He ran for president 5 or 6 times in the United States. He was the president of the Socialist Party of the United States, and he basically said, "Look, the American people will never accept socialism or communism. The name is too pejorative. But if you change it, call it liberalism or call it progressivism, they'll accept every tenet of communism without even knowing it. And then one day they'll wake up and there'll be a socialist communist nation and not even realize how it happened."
And they won't care until they realize that they no longer own anything or have anything of their own.
Well, Marxism is against private property. You can't have private property in communism.
Exactly. But they won't care. They won't even realize until they realize that everything that they had was gone, and then they wonder why. Well, it's because you've supported these policies all along. So, you kind of gave up your stuff willingly. So Lenin, this didn't happen by accident. Lenin had a plan for America.
He had a plan for America and for the world. And realized, unlike Marx, that it was not economics that was the primary mover of social change. It was involved, obviously, but it was politics and organizing politics to foment the revolution is what he saw as the vehicle through which capitalism would be destroyed, democracy would be destroyed, and then you would have socialism for about 20 to 40 years while you did human engineering, and Stalin believed in that too. And then you would eventually have a withering away, like he believed Marx said, because eventually you wouldn't have any alienation or oppression, and you wouldn't need government anymore. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what's happened in every socialist communist regime that has come to fruition in the world. You've had complete control, totalitarianism over every human behavior and thought. That's pretty much what Islam is. They're tantamount to the same thing. A brutal totalitarian ideology that says we want to control every human behavior, every human thought. Islam believes that, and they're just simply masquerading as a religion.
And he started this pretty quickly after the Bolshevik Revolution, or did he start it even before the Bolshevik Revolution?
He actually started thinking about this in 1904. He was in Paris and some of these other locations where he was in exile. Kerensky, who was the first president of Russia when they had a temporary capitalist society and then was overthrown in 1917, the October Revolution, was basically going to be under arrest. And he and Trotsky and Stalin, they all had to be kicked out of the country by the newly ordained bourgeois under the Kerensky government, and then he came back in and overthrew those guys in October, November of 1917. So he had thought about it for a long time, but it wasn't until like 1919 that he actually instituted it, got fairly stable in Russia, and then he started sending out his spies, his community organizers who were loyal to him all over the world. He started in some of the Latin American countries, some of the more backward countries, but eventually infiltrated into the United States, which is the most stable, strongest country of the West. And in his idea, which was, of course, refined by the Marxist school there in Frankfurt, and then eventually Alinsky and Antonio Gramsci and all the other people that refined it, was to destroy the West by constantly ridiculing everything that was Western. All the world's problems were to be blamed on the West in general and capitalism in specific. And one big piece that Gramsci put in there was we have to destroy Christianity because that's made the workers, that's softened the workers, and it's made their plight more acceptable. So he said we got to get rid of Christianity, and they've been trying to do that ever since.
And they did in Russia.
Yes, they had the Russian Orthodox Church, which was nothing but an arm of the government.
Right, exactly, and Bibles were burned. I mean, if you were any other sort of Christian, or you weren't an authorized Christian, you weren't part of the Russian Authorized Church that you were allowed to be, then you were persecuted.
Right. Marxists believe they're atheists. Their religion is Marxism, just like Islam doesn't believe in God. They believe in the moon god that Muhammad, the thug that he was, the thief that he was, the pedophile that he was, convinced them through terror tactics back in the 7th century that the moon god, Allah, was the one that he picked to be their god. And like I said, it's not a religion. It's basically totalitarianism, brutal totalitarianism. And I keep saying this. I've been saying this for 5 years. We are in World War III, but the majority of the Americans don't believe that. But we are.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you, and I would never disagree with you on that. It's occurred to me, but I don't have the military expertise that you do to say that we are. But hearing you say it is a little bit scary. But it makes perfect sense when you look around the world and you look at it, and warfare changes over time. But so this is not the Cold War. What Lenin did led to the Cold War. What we're in is not a Cold War. It's a very hot war.
We're in what they call asymmetric warfare. It's a completely different type of warfare. It's advanced guerrilla warfare. It's called asymmetric warfare. And these guys that with the Muslims and the radical Muslims don't want to call them that. I say it's just Islam. What they do and the way they wage their war is they just literally terrify everybody around them. And you've seen the tactics. They burn Jordanian pilots. They behead people. They shoot them. They kill innocent little children. I saw a video on the internet the other night. It's so disgusting. I can't even mention it to your audience. But they do that to bring all communists and totalitarian type of ideologies do this to bring the population under their wing of fear, so they have less people that are actually out there going to fight them. And that's what they do, and that's exactly what they've done in Islam, and that's what they did in communism. Stalin killed about 60 million of his own people. Mao in China killed about 40 million of his own people, and then that's what they do. You scare the rest. Fear is a tremendous motivator. It brings people in line. That's why I keep saying when I write my articles, we have to stand up as true American patriots and fight them tooth and nail. The tree of liberty has to be refreshed from time to time with the blood of both patriots and tyrants, and that is attributed to Thomas Jefferson. It's absolutely true, Lou. Absolutely true.
Yeah, it is, and I've said this before. To you, I believe our ancestors had to fight for their freedom. Everyone throughout history has had to fight to be free, and unfortunately, we're probably not going to be any different. So here's a great comment that I really agree with, and I know you're going to agree with, from Terry. Islam is a geopolitical system of conquest, with the religion being one facet of it. And actually, I would say is a facade. That religion is a facade of, and right. I think of East Germany, right? And so, yeah, absolutely, Terry, you're absolutely right about that.
Well, it's a religion of warfare.
Right.
And
yeah.
I'm of the humble opinion it came from Satan himself. And, you have different theories on how it evolved. And, of course, there's there like 1.5 billion Muslims now? And I'm sure there's many, many good people of Islam faith out there that don't really understand what's going on. But then there's so many, like the same analogy could be in the Weimar Republic and then when Hitler took over in Germany. You had several good Germans who really didn't know what was going on, but they were complicit in what was happening because they did not stop Hitler. And that's why when they finished the war, Eisenhower made a lot of these German citizens go to those prisoner of war camps and see those Jewish bodies lined up and being put into those furnaces, and the look on their faces and the body language was incredulous. They couldn't believe that was happening. So I think there's probably some Muslims that don't really understand what's happening. But, if you look at what they just did, they did a poll on Al Jazeera, and like 82% of the Muslims that were behind ISIS. They said, sure, we're behind that. So you've got some complicity there.
Yeah, and it gets and then you get into the brainwashing thing too, which is a whole different thing. So we're going on over 100 years now that they've been waiting for capitalism to fall, waiting for the Marxist society to just naturally take hold. When we come back from break, we're going to go to break now, but when we come back from break, we're going to talk about why they're probably really impatient, because they've been waiting for over 100 years for this thing to just naturally happen, and why we might be seeing so much militance and so much anger and so much really revolution over the last 50 years, because I believe they're very impatient. We're going to talk about how communism became progressivism. So we're going to cut to break, and we'll be back with Dr. Randy Arrington in 2 minutes.
K98Talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com.
I like America because it has good people.
A spirit that you can't keep down, a fire inside that'll never burn out. If you are the owner of an American heart.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level, or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@K98FM.com.
You didn't build that. Stop. You didn't build that. You didn't build that. What are you yelling about now? Hey, sit down, guys. I'm almost done. Come on, sit down. I'm on your side, man.
Cause we'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list. And the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist. And the eagle will fly. And it's gonna be hell when you hear mother.
All right, we're back. Dr. Arrington, you still with us,
I'm here.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thanks, Dr. Ray. We've got a question out of the chat room. And this is a little bit off topic, but it came out of the chat room, so we're gonna ask it anyway from a counterintelligence perspective. What's the impact of the compromise of 4 million government workers' records that was in the news today?
Say that question again. I didn't quite hear it.
There were 4 million U.S. government employee records were hacked today. If you saw that news, did you see that?
I think I got what name did I see? I think I have a bad connection, Lou.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So the question from the chat room is 4 million U.S. government employee records were hacked today.
I've been teaching pilots all day long. I didn't know that, but you can bet that if they were hacked, it's probably Russians that are doing it, because that's what's going on right now with Putin over there in charge. You know, he's a former KGB chief, and he's probably doing that. you got to realize, and I worked in the federal government my whole life, basically, both as a naval aviator and then in the civilian sector. Lou, 80% of those people that are working in our federal government in the civilian sector are incompetent to do the job they're in right now. That's the beast, if you will, of our federal government. The beauty of the federal government is it only takes 20% to be successful in a group, and there are some highly intelligent people, true American patriots in the federal government, but 80% are incompetent. So if they were able to hack into our system, it's because they are working for a president who's trying to bring the nation down. And I'm gonna not say anything personally against Mr. Obama, but his policies and what he espouses basically are trying to soften up the United States of America and do what he said was fundamentally transform us. He is an Islamo-communist and wants a fundamental transformation of the United States of America. He was brought up to hate everything in the West, hate the United States, and he wants to destroy us. And I know that may sound harsh to some people, especially the lefties, but this is absolute truth I'm speaking, and I will endure the consequences, I'm sure. What do you think?
Well, whether you'll endure the consequences, I don't know. I'd be afraid to mess with you, Dr. A. If even if I was the president of the United States, I'd be afraid to mess with you. So I don't know if you'll suffer any consequences or not. I certainly hope not. And we only got a year and a half.
It's the Red Nation Rising community, which is very, very strong now. And I believe we're true American patriots, although we probably have been infiltrated too by people. And there's several people I see all the time that get ganged up on Twitter and some of the other social media by people that you think are your friends, and they're really not. They're infiltrators, and that's the tactic that the cultural Marxists do. They remain secretive. They don't have the guts to tell you what their actual goals are, but they know what their goals are, and so we've probably had some people infiltrate Red Nation Rising. But so we have to endure the consequences when we, as a group, speak the truth as true American patriots and conservatives. That's what I was trying to get at.
And we're stronger together, absolutely. And I think that when we band together in such numbers, I doubt very seriously they knew that this was going to happen on social media, that conservatives were actually going to band together, because they don't think we're smart enough to figure out social media, obviously. But we have, and we're definitely stronger in numbers. So I'm with you there. And I think
that's why the DOJ just gave like almost $600,000, I think, to the University of Michigan to kick off a study of right-wing groups and how they blog and talk to each other on the internet.
And I think
it's basically looking at us.
And I think every alum that from the University of Michigan that has the tiniest bit of conservatism in them, or just doesn't want to be spied on, should go after their school. There's no way I would ever put up with. I'd never sit by silent if that was my alma mater. But we're talking, and that is the right, just exactly what I wanted to ask you about, the euphemism of progressive.
Right.
Where it came from, how did it emerge as an acceptable term for communists?
Well, it's similar to liberalism. And classic liberalism was less government intrusion and lots of liberty. That's not the case today. Liberalism is basically communism, and it's the same thing with progressivism. Progressivism started around the turn of the century. We had Teddy Roosevelt ran on the Progressive Party for president. He lost, but he ran for that. So Teddy Roosevelt was progressive. Woodrow Wilson was a progressive, who was president of the United States and also president of Princeton University. And it's another case of marketing. The cultural Marxists realize they can't just come out in our face and say communism, Marxism, communism, Marxism. So they changed the monikers. It's like buying a new and improved box of Wheaties, and you open up the box and you look at it and it's the same old stuff.
There's nothing has
changed. The same old Wheaties. It's the same stuff. So that's what progressivism is. Progressives were supposed to be, they're anti-capitalist. That's what the turn of the century was all about. And they were a big labor party, basically. And so now it's evolved so that progressivism is just a euphemism for communism, and it's about progress. How can anybody be against progress? Well, it depends on the perspective from which you are saying the term progress. If we want to progress from having a limited government to complete control over our behavior by a totalitarian government, that's what they view as progress. They believe, Democrats basically, about 75% of the people in the Democratic Party are progressive communists. Nancy Pelosi is a perfect example. Harry Reid, perfect example. Mr. Obama, they're progressive communists.
They're not really ashamed of it. They're out there enough with it that if you're paying attention, you know what's going on. If you care, you know what they are. But they think that we're too stupid to know what's going on. There is a progressive caucus, and we've called them out on our blog from 2 years ago, and named them. And Bernie Sanders and Maloney and Elizabeth Warren, they've all been in this caucus, and they say they're progressive, and they know that they're socialists. And the Socialist Party of America actually claimed that caucus as their own. What are
right?
People
it's called
not
the Congressional Progressive Caucus, CPC, Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Yes. What are people not getting?
It's probably the reason Alan West was only one term representative out of Florida. He basically called them out and said they're communists. And then they like Saul Alinsky said, freeze that guy and make him a pariah. And that's what they did, and they got him out of office.
Because that's their tactic, is attack. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, hide their truth and change your truth.
Distraction. It's about marketing. If we distract you, if we make you believe that you are a victim, victimology is a tremendous aspect of cultural Marxism. If we can make you believe that you're a victim and identify the culprit that is causing your plight in life, and then promise you that if you entrust me with power, I will exact this wonderful revenge on your behalf against this person or group that's causing, it's usually white males, that's causing your plight in life, then they go for that. They buy that hook, line, and sinker, and you distract them. A lot of them are conveniently ignorant. It's never a good time to be ignorant, Lou.
No, there is never a good time to be ignorant. So, as we're starting to talk about the lies and deception, and you talked about cultural Marxism and how they've actually changed our culture and our lexicon. Talk about that a little bit.
Cultural Marxism came from Lenin, and then it was refined, of course, at Columbia, out of the Frankfurt School. And what they do in cultural Marxism is they throw destructive darts of criticism at all institutions of the Western civilization, Western traditional values and morals. They try to undermine everything in the West. And in specific, not only the morals and values of Western civilization and Christianity, but Western economics as well. And the first thing they do is they convince all the basic weak-minded people in society that they're innocent victims and that they'll take care of them once they come to power, and that they're basically just innocent, downtrodden people that deserve a champion. Now, does that term ring a bell? Your little friend there, Mrs. Clinton, who's running for president, told us in her inaugural address about running for president, I want to be your champion. You know what, Lou? Red Nation Rising people, we don't need a champion. We can be our own champion. Our families can be our own champion. We don't need somebody to take care of us. What the government should do is give us an umbrella of liberty underneath which we can pursue our own goals, not hurting anybody else, not injuring anybody else, but taking care of ourselves and going out and earning our own living, earning our own rewards from life, and then nobody can take it away from us. She wants to be our champion. Mrs. Clinton will never be my champion, Lou.
Right, and I told you about where I grew up and what happened there, and we actually watched them descend upon our small town and convince droves of African Americans that they were their champion, and then put them on welfare. And
right, exactly. It's part of cultural Marxism is political correctness, and I know that we see political correctness. I'm very politically incorrect. I tell the truth, and then I endure the consequences. When I teach at UCLA, I would lecture and tell my students the truth. And I never had anybody walk out of a lecture when I was there, even though I might be saying something that they completely disagreed with, because it's turned pretty liberal there at UCLA. They never walked out because they knew I wasn't going to lie to them. And if you can just get somebody that's on the left just to listen to you, then you've done a good job. You may not be able to convince them because some of them are so brainwashed through these cultural Marxist tactics and political correctness that you can't reach them. But some of them, if they'll listen to you, I think it's Dana West. She used to be a liberal, and suddenly she woke up and said, "No, wait a minute, this is not working." There's a black congressman in Louisiana who basically came out and said, I can't think of his name. He said, "Look, we've been in this war on poverty now since LBJ, 1964. Nothing's changed. We're worse off now than ever before. It ain't working, and it can never work. Never."
Yes, and you talked about how they say. So as we wrap up this conversation, your article with the title of it was "Say It Ain't So, Joe," and you and I have talked about, Joe McCarthy, and you talked about Alan West and the way that they vilified him, and I think that Joe is just, McCarthy was just a great early example of exactly what they'll do to you if you challenge them. So, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the Senate, he was a Republican from Wisconsin. He only lived 49 years. He was very young when he died. He died from, I think it was, he had complications of liver disease from alcoholism, that sort of stuff. Hepatitis, I think is what they said he died from. But he basically started the tidings, in what was part of the tidings commission there, the tidings hearings. And then Tidings was, I think his name was Willard Tidings. He was a Democrat who basically hated Joe McCarthy. But Joe McCarthy went there basically saying, look, there's about 205 communists right now in the State Department who are subversive. They report direct. This is 1950. They report directly back to Joseph Stalin. So they have these hearings to root them out. And he never really could come up with anything concrete that could convince his colleagues. After they got rid of that tidings hearings, he actually started vehemently pursuing homosexuals in government, saying, look, you got homosexuals in government, they are basically right for the people from Soviet Russia to come in and use them as targets of conspiracy. And we will tell the world that you're homosexual unless you do what we tell you to do. They would blackmail them. But Mr. McCarthy ended up getting censured by the Senate, so he had to give up any seat that he had where he was chairman. He did continue to be a senator, but 3 years after the hearings, he died in 1957 at age 40. I think he's 49. So he was a good man. It turns out that he was right. And today, because of cultural Marxism, Lou, there are more communists in our federal government, in the media, in Christianity, in the different social organizations in the United States than ever before, engaging in political correctness and cultural Marxism to try to get these people whipped up and ready to be ripe for a communist revolution. It's just worse now than ever before.
And which makes it just that much more important that, like you said, that we're steadfast, that we stick together, and that we look for, and don't be asleep, and look for those people who are infiltrating us and who are trying to get to what we're doing. Don't let the government spy on us, because you never know who is going to be in that chair at the top. So it's just better that they don't have the right at all. You know what, Dr. A, I know we're going to have you back, but our time is up.
Okay.
for this time, and it's been a pleasure talking to you about this, and I think that you've definitely enlightened me. I hope that everybody has taken something from this conversation. Number one, that we need to be steadfast in what we're doing and stick to our guns. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to go to break. We'll be back in just a minute.
And God bless all those Red Nation Rising patriots out there, for sure.
Fact is,
Thanks,
we had
Dr.
4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
The feeling most people get when they hear Barack Obama speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I don't have that too often.
Steady.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. Ricky Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, will tackle the important issues facing America today as he tries to keep America from coming off the track. Get ready to hear the truth every Monday through Friday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, here on K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network.
Welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy.
Welcome back. We've got just a few things to cover before we sign off tonight. A couple of media highlights I think were really hilarious. And some people were infuriated by them, but I just couldn't help but laugh. I thought they were too funny. It turns out that Mr. Obama is the closest thing to a Jew that we've ever had in the White House. Really? What do you think, Jared?
Well, I just choked down some vomit, but other than that, I think, yeah, that says it all.
Yeah. I can't even go there. I mean, I know that, there are some Muslims that believe that they came from the same place. Is that what he's talking about? Is he admitting to being Muslim? Is that what he's doing there?
Yeah, I think in his roundabout way, he doesn't want to come right out and say it, but he knows we all know.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe that's it. And just as hilarious, I think, was when he said he has made America a respected nation again.
Oh my, please.
Because we were less respected before he came to office, and now we're more respected, which is why, actually after he said that, there was, and I think it was a Saudi news program, but there were 3 pundits, and of course I couldn't understand them. I was trying to read the subtext, the subtitles fast enough to figure out what they were saying, but they were mocking him and saying that he lived in a completely different world. He was on another planet. What is he thinking? And that might have been the most hilarious thing of all, because they were saying what I was thinking. What planet does he live on exactly?
He's a caricature.
Yeah. What?
He's a caricature.
Yeah, he is. He's a caricature. So those are our 2 highlights this week from the media that were just really great. I don't know. It never ends with these guys. There's no end to the comedy. They write, the jokes write themselves, right? I couldn't write jokes like this. There's no way. I couldn't make it up. So,
no. And then his jokes are written for him when he stands up in front of the press and his Hollywood friends and, mocks everybody. He doesn't write that stuff. He can't speak without having the words in front of his face.
He didn't write that?
Yeah, he didn't write that. He didn't write that.
Yeah, he didn't write that. Absolutely, agree. I'm not sure what polls he was citing. He cited a couple of polls. One out of China. Okay. So the Chinese government, the communist government of China, did a poll that said they like Americans more now since Obama is president. Okay, well, that makes perfect sense. And based on the conversation that we just had with Dr. A, there might be a reason that the government of China would want to do that. And I can certainly see why they would support this president.
Oh, yeah, especially with the TPP and the benefit they'd get from that if, that's not going through. We're going to stop that.
Yeah, let's sure hope so. And that's a shout out and a reminder to everybody in the chat room, everybody on Twitter. Go after TPP and TPA. That cannot happen. Go ahead. I
said hammer them. Get on there and just
put
your representatives handle in there, and just we've got so many memes out there to tweet. Just take them, copy the tweets. Just the more, the better.
Yep, and I've got to say, I hate to say that it's the end of another show, and we're going to have to sign off as much as I hate to do it, because we love being with you guys. We want to thank our new home, K98, Ricky Robinson. Next week, we'll have Chris Dixon from ConcealedCarry.net. And coming up next is Game On with JD and Stacy. Stay tuned. They're hilarious. We'll see you here next week, Thursday at 8 p.m. K98 Talk.